Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the FPL Scope and the weekly wildcard draft for GW32, where I try to select what I think is the best squad to have in Fantasy Premier League going forward in the next few game weeks and beyond. And the GW32 is a big wildcard week for a lot of people, because a lot of people are using their wildcard this game week. Some are waiting for GW35 to use theirs instead. I've gone through the two different tactics and how it works out for you in my previous video, which you can check out. But with this video, I'm going to make a wildcard draft for GW32 with the tactic in mind of bench boosting in GW33 and free hitting in GW34. So if you're looking for a different tactic to that, I don't know why you would wildcard this game week if that's not your tactic, but yeah, that would not be this video. But this video is going to go through the squad 1 through 15, all the players in the squad, where I'm going to present to you guys the first player, or the first player that I'm going to present to you guys is going to be the best player currently in FPL, in my opinion, with that tactic in mind. And the 15th player is going to be the last player that made the squad for one reason or another. And it's going to be pretty much self-explanatory this time, because it's going to be a lot of double game week 33 players, basically, and we have limited options because there's only 6 teams that have a double game week. So yeah, you don't really have too many people to choose from when you're wildcarding. So it's actually a pretty easy, simple wildcard if you're going for that tactic. But let's just go through it and talk you through it and mention which players are the most important to have currently in FPL. And the number one player is still the one player that isn't a double game week player, Bruno Fernandes from Manchester United. It just, regardless of your tactic, whether you're wildcarding now, wildcarding later, regardless of what you're doing, Bruno Fernandes should be in your squad from game 32 all the way through the end of the season. So he's the number one pick still in this draft, despite having no double game week. Like, even for people who are now trying to bench boost in game week 33 and then free hitting in game week 34, where Fernandes has Chelsea away in game week 33 only and Brentford at home in game week 34, where you're going to free hit him in anyway if you don't have him. He's still going to be an amazing asset, even though he also has Liverpool at home in the game after that, because that's also a nice fixture for him to be potentially your best captaincy choice. He's just been so good, so consistent this whole season. He's potentially player of the season. We'll see what happens with Arsenal winning the league potentially, and Declan Rice maybe making a late push for it. But Bruno Fernandes has been just absolutely amazing. Once again, he is a Premier League great in my opinion, and an FPL great as well. Like, he's been so consistently good, and there's a reason why he keeps getting these pretty high prices. Like, people sort of scoffed at the idea that he was 9 million at the start of the season, but that has proven to be way less for him, actually, like too little for him. He is going to be worth like 12 million or something next season, maybe even more than that. He's been that in the past, since he's had a couple of seasons previously when he's been amazing, but now back at his number 10 role, he's been absolutely fantastic. Also with the DEFCON points added, he's gotten some of that this whole season, and he's just an outstanding player and the best captaincy choice in any single game week, basically. So game week 32 already, this next game week, he's going to be the best captaincy choice, and he's going to be the best captaincy choice for most of the other single game weeks, which is going to be game week 34, 35, 37, and 38, most likely game week 36 and game week 33 being double game weeks. Yeah, Bruno Fernandes, amazing pick coming in at number 1, and it's pretty self-explanatory, even though he doesn't have a double game week in 33, which is the main point of this wildcard draft, basically. The next guy, though, is someone that has a double game week in 33, and that is going to be Erling Braut Haaland. He has 2 pretty tough matches, Chelsea away and Arsenal at home, but Man City at their current rate are looking really, really good. They basically have the league to go for. They have the FA Cup semi-final against Southampton, which is a pretty easy fixture regardless. Most likely, I mean, you can tell that to Arsenal, but they still lost. But you would expect Man City to go through to the FA Cup final, but they are already out of the Champions League, so they only have the league to think about, and they actually have a chance of catching Arsenal, especially now within these next 2 game weeks. Maybe that it will change. Maybe they will struggle and lose against Chelsea while Arsenal beat Bournemouth, and then they lose against Arsenal, and then that's basically the league wrapped up at that point. But considering the trajectory of both teams, I don't really think that's going to be the case. And for me, Haaland is still going to be the number 1 player from Man City. I did have a think about the next player who I'm going to talk about pretty soon as well, right above Haaland, but Haaland is still like the best captaincy choice there. He's going to be your captain in game week 33. He's going to be your captain in game week 36 in both those double game weeks for Man City, and that's why he is basically a really important player to have. He's also shown some goal scoring form lately. He's been sort of back to his most lethal best lately. He's shown some signs of that at least, so yeah, he's going to be back in amongst the goals, and that could happen already against Chelsea now, where a lot of people don't have him, because a lot of people might have sold him because of the upcoming uncertainty with the blanks and doubles and stuff. So I certainly did. So yeah, I'm a bit worried about him against Chelsea. It's Chelsea away. Chelsea have looked pretty bad lately, and I could see Haaland scoring a lot of goals. I am actually tempted to bring him back in for that game week, even though he doesn't play in game week 34, and that wouldn't make much sense for my tactic, which is not wildcarding now because I've already used my wildcard. But anyways, he is looking like a really dangerous player to have, and I'm for certain going to have him and captain him in Game Week 33 when I'm going to free hit personally. But for you guys, wildcarding, he's going to be a simple choice as your captaincy choice there. Especially like if you don't have the bench boost, you could also potentially triple captain him because he does play. I mean, the Arsenal game is like a must-win game for them, and he can score in that game potentially. And then Burnley away is also a really nice fixture for him. So like it's not the worst game week to triple captain if you have used your bench boost already. But if you're wildcarding now, I'm assuming it is to bench boost in Game Week 33. But anyways, we'll get to that point in Game Week 33. This is Game Week 32 and the Game Week 32 weekly wildcard drafts, basically. Next up is Semenyo, who I did mention also is someone that I would consider as potentially a number 2 pick in this draft ahead of Haaland, but they are, yeah, both pretty simple picks from City. They are both playing pretty much 90 minutes every single important game for Manchester City, so you expect them to get a lot of points. Semenyo has just delivered, kept on delivering. I think at the start of the season for Bournemouth, he was amazing. Now at Man City, he's amazing. He's also a shout for player of the season, honestly. Like, if Man City end up winning the league and he has a strong end to the season, he could be the player of the season for both his work at Bournemouth and at Man City. He's just been outstanding this whole season, and I'm a huge fan of his originally anyway. I had him Game Week 1 last season, so yeah, a pretty big fan of Semenyo. Wish I had him Game Week 1 this season when he scored twice at Anfield. Sort of a sign of things to come at Anfield this season, but yeah, Semenyo has been absolutely amazing, and he is also just a dead certainty when you are wildcarding. And regardless, really, like, despite, like, no matter your tactic, Semenyo should be in your squad 100%. So yeah, pretty simple choice at number 3. He's not on penalties like Haaland, for example, and he's not going to score as many goals. He doesn't have the same type of ceiling, but he's just consistently been putting forward 8-pointers, 10-pointers, 12-pointers lately. He's just amazing. So yeah, Semenyo, simple choice at number 3. Number 4, I've actually gone with João Pedro pretty highly. I think he is actually also a really good pick. He's someone that you could potentially consider as your third like blank option in Game Week 34 if you're still looking to play Game Week 34 without a free hit. I think João Pedro is still a good choice because he's been, yeah, just in really good form. He's also been delivering most of the season, especially after Lemar Senior came in. He's been absolutely fantastic. The last 2 games for Chelsea haven't been quite as good, but João Pedro is someone that could easily score a lot of goals again. He's another player that I'm quite worried about not having this game week, which is actually something that lends well to the Game Week 32 wildcard. The Game Week 32 team for the wildcard team, like if you're wildcarding now in Game Week 32, the Game Week 32 squad in particular is not looking as good because you're setting up for Game Week 33, which is a double game week. But I think the likes of Haaland and João Pedro are players that I am quite fearful of not having personally. So I think they're looking pretty good. I think that could be a high-scoring game as well. I think Chelsea are better going forward than defensively. Just depends if they can make some trouble for Man City, but that's going to be an interesting game to watch for sure, with Chelsea sort of dwindling a bit and Man City sort of soaring a little bit now. You would expect City to sort of, like, the most expected result there would be like a 3-1, 3-0 type of result for Man City, but you could easily see that being a high-scoring game for both teams and João Pedro getting a lot of goals. But beyond that, he has, well, not the best double game week. Man United at home, Brighton away. Like, it's not ideal, but it is 2 decent fixtures. A home game against a team that has been quite leaky this season, at least at certain points, at Man United, and then away game to Brighton, which is like a sort of tough away ground this season, but is also Brighton. You could score a lot of goals in that game potentially. And João Pedro has, of course, it's his former club as well. Could be a storyline game there, but he is just looking really good. And then Nottingham Forest at home in Game Week 35. This is one of the good reasons to wildcard in Game Week 32. Like I mentioned in my previous video, the Game Week 35 squad is actually looking really good if you're wildcarding Game Week 32 with Game Week 33 in mind. So yeah, João Pedro is one of those reasons. He is looking like a nice option for Game Week 35 honors as well, and he's going to be good for the double game week, and he has potential to score against Man City now this game week as well. So João Pedro, really big fan of his this season in FPL, even though I haven't really had him much. But on the outside looking in, I wish I had him at certain points. Start of the season, he was on fire. Not too long ago, he was on fire as well. I say not too long ago, but like in terms of FPL game weeks, the last 2 game weeks he's blanked, but it's a long while actually since he actually delivered, because it's been such a huge break. As you can see, my last draft was March 19th, and I'm recording this on April 9th. Like, I don't know why they had that big of a break, but anyways, I digress. Let's move on to number 5. That's going to be Nico O'Reilly from Man City, tripling up on Manchester City with their 2 double game weeks. Makes a lot of sense. Nico O'Reilly is looking like a really good player to have as well. He keeps getting goals and assists playing in midfield. He is just a cheat code basically at this point. He's going to play most matches for Man City, as he has done all season long. He's another like good season keep kind of player. Like all these players actually, like if you had the season, all these guys from the start of the season, O'Reilly, Fernandes, Semenyo, Haaland, João Pedro, you probably are in a pretty good position now. And that's sort of the story of this season, like just keeping the best assets and just like staying with them, being patient with players and not switching all the way around and keep switching players. That is usually a pretty good or that has been a pretty good way to go this season in FPL. But Nico O'Reilly, completely underpriced this season. I think he's going to be like 6.5, maybe even 7 million if he keeps this up. I mean, he's going to probably going to be a midfielder actually, so he might not be as good of an asset anymore if that's the case. But if he keeps staying as a defender, he's going to be 7 million at least. So yeah, Nico O'Reilly, really good player, really good attacking player as well in his midfield role, but then he can also get clean sheets, so he's also a really nice asset in that regard. He's my favorite City defender currently, so he comes in at number 5 in this draft. Next up at number 6, we have Cole Palmer, who is of course player from Chelsea with the same type of fixtures as João Pedro. And I think it's sort of the inverse of what's happening with Haaland and Semenyo here, where Palmer is someone that is like maybe not as consistently good and also a bit more expensive than his counterpart in João Pedro, but he's also a more high upside player, kind of like Haaland is for Man City. So I think this double up with both or in attack for both City and Chelsea are quite similar. You have Palmer / Haaland as like the main guys who can get a lot of points and in a hurry as well, like they can get 20 pointers all of a sudden. And then you have João Pedro and Semenyo who will most likely just keep chugging along and getting points here and there. So I do quite like those players all around. I'm not quite sure if I would captain Palmer in any game week. Maybe when he plays Nottingham Forest at home in game week 6 or in game week 35, I should say. When Fernandes has Liverpool at home and Haaland has Everton away. But other than that, I think I would just stick to captaining Fernandes or, well, Fernandes in single game weeks and Haaland in double game weeks. That's most likely going to be the play going forward now in this season. But Palmer, of course, there is always that injury doubt, but he has been quite fit and ready to play most of the season as well. He seems to be back in full fitness now and not really having any issues with that. So I think he's going to be good to go. He's also like kind of a no-brainer with the double game weeks in mind in game week 33. He's kind of like a simple choice as well, and that's why he's as high as number 6. But I do think the other players that I have selected in front of him have more upside or are more secure players to have. Basically, all 5 of the players selected before him are really, really, really good with this tactic in mind. So yeah, Palmer's still a really good pick. He's also someone that could all of a sudden be the highest scoring player from now until the end of the season. I would not be surprised at all to see him do that, but it's been also quite a while since he was at that level for Chelsea, like 2 seasons back when he was like the best player in FPL basically, and he cost like 5 million, which is crazy, like his debut season for Chelsea. But anyways, Palmer looking like a really good pick and coming in at number 6. Number 7, we have James Hill from Bournemouth, also a pretty simple choice. He's also someone that was in, one of the few that was in the draft in Game Week 31 all the way back in March 19th with a very different tactic of not free hitting in Game Week 33, or in free hitting in Game Week 34, I should say. But Hill is just a simple choice as well. He's really cheap, has decent enough fixtures, like a pretty decent and good double game week in Game Week 33. Not the best fixture now against Arsenal away, which is one of the drawbacks to wildcarding in Game Week 32, because you're going to triple up on Bournemouth, and those guys are most likely just going to be on your bench, basically. But at the same time, I wouldn't be too surprised to see James Hill and Bournemouth keep a clean sheet against Arsenal. Arsenal are struggling to score at the moment. Bournemouth have been quite tough to beat lately as well. So yeah, Hill has been just chugging along with the points, getting a lot of points here and there. He's actually been better when it comes to points per game than Senesi lately, and he's a full million cheaper. So I think he is like the best pick out of the bunch from the rest of the defenders outside of Nico O'Reilly, basically, for the next few game weeks. Double game week, like I said, Newcastle away and Leeds at home, Palace at home as well in Game Week 35. Like I mentioned, a lot of these players have good fixtures in Game Week 35. That's why it is probably or potentially a good reason to go with wildcard Game Week 32 rather than wildcard in Game Week 35, because you're most likely going to be wildcarding away from these players like in Game Week 35, or not most likely, but there is like a chance that you end up with sort of the same team in Game Week 35 when you're wildcarding there, and you wouldn't have gotten the advantages of the Game Week 33 bench boost, for example, if you follow this tactic of wildcarding in 32, bench boosting in 33, and free hitting in 34. That's probably going to give you more points from now until Game Week 35, where you're going to select a lot of the same players that you have in this draft, actually, because they have really good fixtures to end the season, and Hill is one of them with Palace at home in Game Week 35. But yeah, Hill, really cheap, really good, solid choice for DEFCON points and stuff, like a nice bench boost option potentially for Bournemouth, and he seems to be playing every single minute for them. He's been a really good asset for them this season and has helped shore up their defense and sort of made sure that they're not in the relegation battle this season, because for a while before he came into the team, they were kind of starting to struggle a bit, but with him in the team, they've been so much more solid defensively, and he's a big reason for that, all his defensive contributions, both in and out of FPL, basically. So yeah, number 7, we have James Hill for a really cheap price still. Number 8, we have Jean-Paul van Hecke from Brighton. Also really good fixtures here with Burnley away and Spurs away in these next 2 game weeks, and also with the Chelsea at home double game week fixture there as well. Of course, you're wanting Palmer and João Pedro to score a lot of goals in that game, so hopefully with van Hecke you get him taking or making most of his points in that Spurs game in Game Week 33. But he has Burnley at home, or Burnley away, I should say, in Game Week 32. Another good reason to wildcard, I guess, to get in Brighton players, because they have a really nice fixture. Van Hecke, also a pretty good player for DEFCON points, has even scored twice in the same game this season, so he has that high-end potential as well going forward. So you could get really lucky, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see that on the bench boosting Game Week 33, especially since I'm not doing that tactic myself, and usually I always pick the wrong tactic when it comes to FPL at the end of the season, basically. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Van Hecke scoring Spurs in that game. Spurs are quite bad at defending set pieces as well, where Van Hecke could get some points and do some damage in that regard. The rest of the season for Brighton, not the best, but I mean, the 2 game weeks that they have now is like one of the big reasons to wildcard in Game Week 32. And Van Hecke is the best player, I think, from the Brighton squad, with not too many good attacking players there. And also like Van Hecke just having more upside than someone like Verbruggen, who we'll get to eventually, trust me. But Van Hecke comes in at number 8 in this draft. Number 9, we have Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Also really nice fixtures for Leeds. The upcoming fixture now is Man United. Again, Game Week 32 is not ideal for the Game Week 32 wildcard squad, but the rest of the season is going to be amazing for Calvert-Lewin, with Wolves at home and Bournemouth away in the double game week. Burnley at home in Game Week 35 as well, after you free hit in Game Week 34. So Calvert-Lewin is looking like a really nice striker to have. And I do prefer him over Welbeck. I did mention now that I don't think the Brighton players are that good attacking-wise, because Welbeck is the type of player that plays like 2 games in a row and then he needs a rest. So if he plays in Game Week 32, which you want him to, he probably rests in one of the games in the double game week, which is like sort of going against why you would pick him in the first place, because you want a double game week player to play both matches. And that's something you can trust with Calvert-Lewin. He's going to play both matches. He's the main striker up front for Leeds. They are struggling a bit with injuries, especially defensively, but that could bode well for them as well. Maybe they need to go a bit more forward to score goals, because they might concede some more goals. Lately, they've been more stingent defensively and not conceding so much, but not scoring so much either. But maybe Calvert-Lewin can fight back to his best form from earlier this season, when he was just scoring every single game week. It felt like that could happen again now, with a lot of people wildcarding in Game Week 32 as well. I would not be too surprised to see that. So Calvert-Lewin is also a good pick. Really cheap striker as well. Gives you some more money to play around with the rest of the squad. So Calvert-Lewin comes in at number 9 as the best Leeds attacking player by quite a distance for me, especially with Stock now slightly injured there, or a doubt for the next few game weeks, basically. Number 10, we have Tavernier from Bournemouth. A little bit unsure about his first name now that I would think about it. There's 2 Taverniers, one in Rangers and one in Bournemouth. Is it James? Is it? I can't remember exactly. But anyways, Tavernier from Bournemouth is a really high upside player. He hasn't really gotten that many points lately, but he's been really close to having some really nice games. He's just been a bit wasteful. He is that kind of player, really streaky, really up and down when it gets to point scoring. So that's why it's also kind of nice to just have him and play him for a lot of game weeks and just like wait for that big game week to happen, because some players are like that, where they get like 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, 20 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. Other players are like 6 points, 7 points, 8 points consecutive game weeks. Tavernier is way more of the former type of player. So yeah, just trust him in the double game week, trust him against Palace, and then after that you can just basically see what you need for your squad, and maybe you sell him at that point or something like that. But he has a decent chance in those 3 fixtures: Newcastle away, Leeds at home, Palace at home, in Game Week 33 and Game Week 35, to get that high scoring game week that you want him to get. I wouldn't be too surprised to see that happening in Game Week 33 either, with Tavernier, who I think his name is James. But anyways, he is also sometimes taking set pieces and penalties potentially for Bournemouth as well, so he has a good upside there in that regard as well. So yeah, he comes in at number 10 in this draft. A pretty cheap player as well for decent team in Bournemouth, better defensively than offensively, but Tavernier is their best offensive asset right now, as I can see it at least. Number 11, we have Senesi, a triple up from Bournemouth as well, of course, because they have the double game week, which is pretty nice, and Game Week 35, which is pretty nice, like I mentioned. Of course, you're most likely going to bench all 3 of them, Hill, Senesi, and Tavernier, for this upcoming game week, but you might have to start either Senesi or Hill, depending on what you do with your defense. But I have sort of made a difference in that regard with my final defender, as I'll get into eventually in this video. But Senesi, this whole season, really good for DEFCON points. He has had some attacking threat as well, some assists and goals. He's like, overall potential has sort of gone down a little bit with Hill coming into the team, both DEFCON wise and attacking return wise. It's been sort of Hill taking over a bit of those categories from Senesi, and he's also $1 million cheaper, so I do prefer Senesi or Hill over Senesi by a little bit. But Senesi is still a good pick, especially for the double game week and game week 35, like I just previously mentioned, for Bournemouth, who are a lot better defensively now than they were previously in the season, or in the middle way of the season, basically, when they were struggling a lot in a lot of game weeks. But yeah, Senesi, decent, solid choice. He's going to get you quite a lot of points. You have quite enough money in the bank, I think, to have him in as well, despite him being a bit more expensive than most other defenders, because he's been pretty good earlier this season and has gotten some price rises. But Senesi, yeah, coming in at number 11, I do think the triple up on Bournemouth makes sense, and 2 defenders makes more sense than 2 attackers, because I do trust their defense more than their attack currently in this season. But of course, the downside, again, with the likes of Brighton and Bournemouth is the fact that they're most likely not going to have anything to play for by the end of the season. That's why it's a bit precarious to wildcard into those players and have them long term. You're going to have triple up on, or I think double up actually, not triple up in this draft with Brighton players and triple up with Bournemouth players when they most likely won't have that much to play for from game week 35 onwards. They might be on the beach and not really care that much, but they also don't have anything else to play for. They don't have any European competitions that they play in. They are both out of the cups, so yeah, I think they have like decent potential as well in FPL, especially if they do. I think both teams have like a potential to get into like European spots, because there's a lot of European spots going to English teams, so there could be more to play for. But yeah, that's why I'm a bit like questioning, because Brighton and Bournemouth are like not the ideal teams to have in FPL, but they also have like decent enough assets, and especially with these defenders, Hill, Van Hecke, and Senesi, pretty good DEFCON potential as well. So I do quite like them. Senesi even has some attacking threat. So yeah, he comes in at number 11. Number 12, we have Carl Darlow from Leeds. Really good fixtures. The Leeds defense, though, is struggling quite a bit, but Darlow is so cheap that I think he makes the most sense as a pretty nice goalkeeper to have. You're going to bench boost in game week 33 with him, Wolves at home and Bournemouth away. You're going to start him against Burnley at home as well in game week 35, and he's going to be a really nice goalkeeper to have. Just going to double up with the other goalkeeper here as well in Bart Verbruggen, of course, with also some pretty nice fixtures in the next 2 game weeks. You're going to start Verbruggen in game week 32 and then have him as your starter or bench booster, depending, like, no matter what you want to do in the next game week with Verbruggen. And then after that, like, not the best fixtures, but I think Darlow rotates pretty well with him, as you can see in game week 35 there. Darlow has Burnley at home and Verbruggen has Newcastle away, so just start Darlow in that game week. But I think that's those 2 goalkeepers really cheap. You don't really want to spend too much money on goalkeepers for the rest of the season. They have the double game weeks. They have pretty good fixtures, especially Darlow ends the season with a lot of good fixtures, and Leeds have a lot to play for because they need to avoid relegation as well. So yeah, I think there's going to be quite a lot of points in between these 2 goalkeepers for a really cheap price. I think they're a really nice double up in the goalkeeper spots, basically, for the next upcoming game week, with this tactic in mind, with wildcarding in game week 32, bench boosting in game week 33, free hitting in game week 34, and so forth, basically. Next up, number 14, we have Gabriel Magalhaes, the second guy who doesn't have a double game week in game week 33. He's someone you could potentially sell in game week 33 as well. I was a bit hesitant. That's why I have him as the number 14th pick. I'm like not completely sure I would have him in the squad, but considering you have a lot of value tied into him, he has a really nice fixture against Bournemouth. You could always just sell him in game week 33. I'm going to have him for now, but in a game week 33 wildcard draft, I might have to drop him out because, yeah, with this tactic, you want double game week players in game week 33. But at the same time, also, you're going to have to bench someone in game week 33 if you're wildcarding in game week 33. I just realized, so you need 3 players on the bench that you don't really care about for game week 33. So Gabriel could actually still be in the game week 33 wildcard draft, but we'll see that with the next video that I make in this series, basically. About Gabriel, he's just such a good player. He's been the best FPL asset this season, scoring goals, keeping clean sheets. Arsenal have good fixtures to end the season. They have everything to play for. They need to secure a Premier League title, and it feels like they're sort of trying to secure it by defending first and attacking later and just hoping to get that 1 goal. They're probably going to keep the clean sheet quite a lot, I think, still, even though they will be having a lot of pressure on them and they will have like the whole bottle job sort of thing hanging over them. But Gabriel has just been so good this season that I just can't let him not be in the wildcard draft. I think he's been in the wildcard draft for every single game of this season, apart from like the period where he was injured, because Gabriel is just that guy. He's been fantastic all season. Really happy that I had him for game week 1 personally in my own season as well. He's been a huge favorite of mine, both in FPL and in the real world. I think he's such a good defender. And yeah, he's just a really solid pick, especially with Bournemouth at home now this next game week, where I think he's going to keep a clean sheet, hopefully for him and Arsenal's sake, I guess. But yeah, Gabriel at number 14, despite not having a double game week. That's why he's ranked so low, but usually if it was just single game weeks from now until the end of the season, he'd be like the number 2 pick or something, because he is just absolutely fantastic. But with this tactic, not quite as good, but I do feel like also you need to sort of go with an Arsenal defender. That's sort of like the dilemma that you have. Like, do you go for one Arsenal defender, or are you just going to go like full guns blazing and just hoping that Arsenal concede? Because even if you have only Gabriel, you're going to hope that Gabriel and Arsenal concede every single game, because a lot of people will have double up and triple up even on Arsenal defenders, and you'll just have the one in Gabriel. So yeah, maybe you just want to go outside of Arsenal and bet against Arsenal and bet on them being bowlers and stuff instead. You have some other options there, as I'll get to eventually with the on the cusp section in this video, basically. Next up, number 15, we have Pascal Gross from Brighton. I think he has like the fixtures are really good. Burnley and the Spurs, even Chelsea at home now. Chelsea have been looking not so good lately, so that could also be nice points for Gross, especially on a bench boost. I could see that happening and being a huge successful bench boost for anyone that does that, because it would be really typical. And Gross just, yeah, has a lot of avenues for goals. He could potentially get penalties at some point. Set pieces as well. Like, he's a pretty good set piece taker in general. Pascal Gross has some defcon potential, has some open play potential as well to score or assist from open play. So he has quite a lot of boxes ticked, and he's also not too expensive. So I do think he's a nice pick, but he's also someone that you're going to most likely bench most game weeks anyway. You're going to bench the Bournemouth players in game week 32, and then of course you're going to bench boost with Gross in Game week 33, but after that, he's probably not going to be of much use for you. But he's also quite cheap, so he's not really that that big of a hindrance either for your team. So I think it's a pretty solid pick, and I quite like him in the draft. Regardless, I think people are like sort of downplaying him and like don't really feel good about any Brighton attacker. Maybe they feel good about Welbeck if they think he's going to start, but for me, Gross is the more safe option to play 90 minutes every single game week. Someone you can depend on basically from Brighton, and that's why I prefer him over the other Brighton assets pretty much. And that fulfills the 15-man squad here in this Game week 32 wildcard draft. As you can see, a lot of green names, too many to count, really. I mean, there's 10 new ones because there's only 5 guys left from the last draft that I did in Game week 31 with a completely different tactic, I should add. That's why the draft has changed quite a lot, and that's why it's going to be quite easy to go through the drop players and why I've dropped them, because it's basically just the same for every single player. They don't have a double game week in Game week 33, and this tactic is with bench boost Game week 33 in mind, and you want to have two fixtures rather than one in most cases. So yeah, let's just go through the drop players and see if there's any exceptions to that rule that I just made. Igor Thiago is someone that you could have for one game week potentially. I've seen people do that. They have Igor Thiago or Jared Bowen, who's another player that I had in the draft last time. You can have those guys for one game week and sell them for either João Pedro or Calvert-Lewin, depending on what you want for game week 32. Personally, I would have João Pedro rather than Calvert-Lewin for game week 32. I think he's a better option. Calvert-Lewin has Man United away. I think that's a tougher fixture actually for Calvert-Lewin and Leeds than City at home is for João Pedro. So for me, if you were to do the tactic of having Thiago or Bowen for one game week and then selling them for the double in game week 33 for someone like João Pedro or Calvert-Lewin, I would have João Pedro in game week 32 and sell Thiago/Bowen for Calvert-Lewin in game week 33, if that makes sense. Anthony Gordon is a good player for anyone who's on the other tactic, of course, where you're not wildcard or not free hitting in game week 34. And you're bench boosting game 33 and wildcarding game 32 like I am with this tactic. Gordon is a really nice player who you miss out on by doing this tactic of wildcarding in game 32, but he is someone that has of course also been dropped because of that instance, like the fact that we are wildcarding in game 32 with this draft. Virgil van Dijk, another player who's also pretty good. Like Liverpool aren't that good lately. They've been really struggling, so maybe it's just as well to not have him. But he's someone that is in my team, for example, for game 32 and game 34, who's going to be like a big detriment to you if he gets a lot of points in those game weeks if you're wildcarding in game 32 yourself. But yeah, Van Dijk also, same applies to him. Bowen I already mentioned with in regards to Thiago, someone you could have for one game week. But when it comes to Bowen or Thiago for this game week, if you want to have one of those players, between those two guys, probably have to go with Thiago just because he is just a more secure player. He's been better overall this season. Bowen missed the penalty now in the penalty shootout in the FA Cup, so he could be off penalties again because he's honestly not that good of a penalty taker, even if it does get penalties. Thiago, you have more hope for scoring a penalty, but also Bowen has a better fixture, so it is a bit of a tough choice between the two. But I think personally I would go for Igor Thiago for one game week only if you still want to do that tactic. But I also don't mind going with João Pedro and Calvert-Lewin straight away, as I've done in this draft, of course. Also, we have Szoboszlai, who's another player who is good for the other tactic if you want to have Liverpool players for the single game weeks, basically. And you free hit in the double game week, Szoboszlai is a good option there. Ekitike, not quite as good as an option anymore with Isak now being back in the fold. Ekitike getting subbed off like 15 minutes before the end of the game against PSG last time. His minutes are going to be going down, and I would not keep him whatsoever in a wildcard. Like, Thiago and Bowen are better as like a 1 week punt than Hecke. But at the same time, Hecke, we've seen them in the past score highly in these single game weeks all of a sudden. Wouldn't be surprised to see him score a brace now, despite having a really poor match against PSG. But Liverpool also looking really bad, so I do feel like Thiago and Bowen are just simply better picks right now for a single game week if you want to go for that tactic. Raya, Arsenal, of course, going out of the FA Cup means that they don't have a double game week in Game Week 33, and they face Man City there. So, yeah, you want to avoid Arsenal players mostly, but Gabriel is like a safety blanket here. But Darlow and Verbruggen are pretty simple choices on the double game week 33 bench boost option that I have right here. Dango as well, Brentford players you want to avoid if you do this tactic. Makes a lot of sense. Anderson, Fulham as well. Doesn't even have the best fixtures either, so he's a simple drop as well. And El Hadji Malik Diouf for West Ham, also getting some tough fixtures later on in the season and doesn't have a double game week in Game Week 33. So again, a simple drop since last time. Finally, to end this video, which is getting quite long now actually, we have 3 players on the cusp, 3 players you could consider, 3 players with double game weeks that are also in contention that I haven't included in the squad, but they have like a case to be made for them at least, so I'm going to make that case. And I think the strongest case is to be made for Cucurella because he is the one that has been dropped out for Gabriel in this instance. I do think he has like pretty nice upside, honestly. Cucurella, he's been so good in previous seasons, especially last season. He had like a really nice run of fixtures where he got like 2 15-pointers in a row, I think. He could manage to do that again, and I do quite like having him as a third Chelsea option. The fact that I only have 2 Chelsea players on a wildcard where they are one of the few teams doubling up in Game Week 33 is kind of weird, but at the same time, they have tough fixtures. That's why I'm like not as high on the rest of the assets there. I wouldn't be surprised to see them concede against City, Man United, and Brighton. So that's why Cucurella is not quite as good of an option. But against his former team in Brighton, against the team that he almost went to in Man City, maybe he has something for you there. He could be a better option than Gabriel, but Gabriel has just been so much more consistent this season that I prefer Gabriel over Cucurella. But Cucurella, like slightly, like in the video yesterday, I actually made the case for Cucurella over Gabriel. I'm a bit torn on the two, so it is a really close call. I think people are sort of underestimating Cucurella just because he hasn't been as good this season, but he seems to be pretty nailed at the left back spot for Chelsea with Liam Senior in charge. And he has that really high upside, but yeah, this season hasn't been quite as good as previous seasons with Maresca basically last season, and even this season under Maresca he wasn't as good, but yeah, he's a decent pick. Anton Stach I actually had as an option before the latest injury news of him most likely being out for, well, he's going to be out for Game Week 32 and potentially being out until May, so that would sort of rule him out as an option as well, but I don't think there's that many other good options to go for basically from Leeds. So yeah, Stach, if he's fit to play all of a sudden in Game Week 33, he could be a good option, but the recent news as of right now is that he's going to be a huge doubt for that game week as well. So yeah, just most likely you can just avoid him as well and not think about him too much either. And finally, Danny Welbeck, like I mentioned previously in this video already, I'm not quite sure about him starting all 3 fixtures coming up now against Burnley away, Spurs away, and Chelsea at home. I should have checked out whether he had played the last few games as well, but there's also been quite a long break now, so he should be fit and rested at least. So that's potentially a good sign for him going forward, but I think Calvert-Lewin is just, he's cheaper, he has better fixtures, he has had good form this season as well. So yeah, I think Calvert-Lewin is just preferable as a striker basically right now. So yeah, I think that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. A big wildcard week. I hope you have had a good think about whether to wildcard or not. I don't hope that you do well with this wildcard team because I'm going with a different tactic since I wildcarded already in Game Week 23. So for me, I'm going to root against all these players, but I think these players have a decent shot of having some really good games going forward and sort of making my FPL life a little bit worse, I guess. But good luck to you if you're wildcarding, I guess. But even more good luck to us who are not wildcarding for me, because we're going to have completely different teams to this, which is kind of fun, honestly. To have like the whole FPL fan base split 50-50, like some players going, or some managers going with completely different players than the others, makes for quite a fun end to the season. And who knows, it could be like maybe Bournemouth are playing really badly, Brighton are playing really well, Liverpool are playing badly, Chelsea playing well. Like it could be like a mix and match. Like it doesn't have to be that one tactic like goes to the moon and the other tactic goes to hell basically. It could be like both tactics have advantages and disadvantages and you get sort of similar-ish points. yeah, that could be the case as well. But anyways, it is very much team dependent whether you show wildcard or not, but this is the wildcard I would go for if you go for the wildcard to 32, bench boost 33, free hit 34 route basically. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative. It was sort of cut off a little bit at the middle there. I was like in the zone doing really well, and then the doorbell rang and I was just like, whoa, shit. So I had to basically edit the video a little bit this time around. Well, edit, I say, but I had to start over with the recording at least halfway through. But anyways, that is it for the video. I'm rambling. That's usually time for me to say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and all that good stuff. Thank you for watching again, which I also almost always do in my videos. And now I've held my hand up to my head too long, so bye-bye. Number 6, we have Cole Palmer from Chelsea, of course, with the double Game Week 33 in mind, and also, like I said, with João Pedro, pretty good fixtures for Chelsea for the rest of the season after Game Week 34. Palmer also is a no-brainer when you're free hitting in Game Week 34 and you don't have to worry about those blank game weeks there. Jesus Christ. Jeez.